Good evening and welcome to the Monday, May 1st, 2023 meeting of the Merrimack School Board for SAU 26. If I could ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First item on the agenda is public participation. If you are joining us tonight and would like to speak, we ask that you please approach the microphone, state your name and address for the record. And if you are a student, there is no need to give your address, just your name. So the mic is open.
Good evening, members of the school board. My name is Gary Krupp from 4 Ministerial Drive. I'm here to discuss the issue of coaching evaluations at the high school athletic department. As a concerned parent and family member, community member, I've provided constructive feedback to the athletic director, the principal, the superintendent over the past 3 years on coaching evaluations without any action discernible being taken at this point. And even at this point, I'm still not sure whether the school district or the athletic department even has a written policy or procedure to evaluate coaches. I believe it's essential for the district to establish a comprehensive evaluation system that includes input from students, parents, and coaches themselves. This system should be transparent, objective, and provide coaches the constructive feedback that will enable them to improve their skills and better serve our student athletes. I urge the school board to exercise its oversight role by asking questions of the director later in tonight's meeting that will help clarify the department's evaluation policies and procedures. For example, what metrics are used to evaluate coaches? Who provides the feedback and how is it collected and used? How is the evaluation process communicated to coaches and parents? Are evaluations used to make decisions on retention? And if so, what are the criteria? These are essential questions that must be answered to ensure that our student athletes receive the best possible coaching. Participation in athletics at the high school level has fallen in nearly all sports, I believe. It's my opinion that good coaches can help reverse that trend. I think it's crucial for the school board to hold the athletic department accountable for their evaluation practices. Thank you for your attention.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will move on to recognitions.
We have no recognitions this evening, but we will at our next school board meeting.
All right, moving on to informational updates, and we will start with the superintendent update.
Thank you. Next week, some of you may know, is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we will be recognizing our staff. As you know, they are the heart and soul of our school district and of any school district, and we appreciate everything we do, so we'll be ready to celebrate with them and recognize them for their accomplishments. Friday of this week is School Lunch Hero Day. This is an important event in terms of recognizing our school food service workers. Everyone matters in a school district. Everyone makes a difference in the life of a child and a contribution to the development of a child. And so we want to appropriately recognize our school food service workers towards the end of this week for everything they do every day. They have one of the toughest jobs in the school district and are some of the unsung heroes. From Tammy LeBreau at the high school, her business students participated in the New England Food Truck Challenge. That's of interest to me. New England College received over 100 submissions. We have the following winners here in her class, and these students will receive a free dinner and presentation from Adam Mosier, owner of Taco Biondo, on Thursday the 18th. There were many entries and competitors, and here are the winners. Burgers and Burgers were Ron Tahita Gialusis, Kishan Strivasan, Ben Beausoleil, and Tawan Burger from Merrimack High School. For Fusion Sushi on a Roll, Megan Cottrell, Noor Eldib, Ari Arnold from the high school. Trios tacos category, Aiden Centrella, Ella Baharik, Josh Keenan. Seafood, surf and turf competition, Sam Giles, Tobias Werner, and Jake Allen. And parked car, Owen Miner, Kyle Dunner, Owen Sadowski, all from the high school. So we congratulate them on that great competition. Here is a list. I'll pass this around for you. There were about 20 different categories. And so our students scored very well in about 7 or 8 of them. So we congratulate them. From Harley Hall. This week marks the start of Senior Week ticket sales. Seniors will be choosing which events they'd like to participate in for the last week before graduation. These events include a movie on the football field, a trip to Six Flags, a senior semi-formal on the Mount Washington, and of course, the Hawk Walk. If community members and families have questions about the event, they can reach out to Mr. Hall or Mrs. Dumay at the high school. And we congratulate the class of 2023. From Barbara Francisco at Thornton's Ferry. 4th grade classes and 1 multi-grade class at TFS. Spent time last Friday before vacation weeding and cleaning up in front of the flower beds at the school and in the flower beds at our school. It was part of the Earth Day celebration and partly to get ready for a service project later in May. Students will be researching and learning about pollinators and what plants help them, then planting some of these plants in front of the TFS gardens. And the gardens look amazing from all of the work. From TFS also, families of 3rd and 4th graders are invited to join the Unified Arts team for our year-end Showcase of Learning celebration on Tuesday, May 23rd from 5:30 to 7. So we ask everybody to mark their calendars for that. We have from Holly Levine at the middle school, we have 7 band students and 2 chorus students working hard to prepare for Saturday's South Central District Honor Band and Chorus Festival. We're looking forward to a great event on Saturday in Bedford. Thank you to, a lot of times music staff don't get the recognition that they need for the extraordinary amount of time that they spend out of school hours with students in competitions like this, festivals, band, marching in parades, in every school district. They do an extraordinary job and an extraordinary time commitment to the students of a school system, and particularly here in Merrimack. From Matthew Gage, who has worked with the robotics team. I want to send a quick thank you from the robotics team for all of the support for the high school and the district. The robotics team qualified for the 2nd year in a row for the first championships in Houston. This is a huge accomplishment for the team based on the quality of programs and teams in New England. They competed on Johnson Field with 78 other teams from around the world. They had a great experience. The biggest highlight of the season was being selected to represent the district as one of the 4 Impact Award winning teams. So once again, an organization continues to distinguish itself, and congratulations to them. From Lindsay Townsend, Kevin Horan, a paraprofessional at MES, who is also a music instructor, has offered rock band programs to the Merrimack Parks and Rec students for Reeds Ferry, Thornton's Ferry, and Merrimack schools. They participated in the program. Many students have participated in the program, creating songs under Kevin's direction, and it's been a great experience for the 4th graders at RFS. From Adam Goodman at J. Muse, the Relay for Life team will walk in the American Cancer Society's event on June 17th in Derry. Many of the teammates have participated in the event since 2017, and this is an extraordinary event. We congratulate them for their efforts to raise funds for the American Cancer Society. And from Sarah Campbell, this past Thursday, the Merrimack Granite State Challenge team defeated Hopkinton to advance to the finals. Behind strong performances from all members of the team, all of the players contributed to the win, which punched the team's ticket to the finals for the 4th consecutive year. The finals will air on New Hampshire Public Broadcasting on Thursday, May 11th. A win in the finals will give Merrimack a 3rd championship banner. So outstanding students and outstanding staff bringing great pride to themselves, the school system, and the community. And we congratulate all of them.
Thank you. Questions and comments from the board? Thank you very much. Moving on to Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum update.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful April vacation. We are now entering the last 7 or so weeks of school, and I know all of you remember this time that it's really busy, full of a lot of activities and celebration, a lot of transitions. I just want to let you know that I know that the teachers and staff and administrators are already working hard to close out this year with reflection and celebration, prepare students to make that transition to the next school year, and to spark excitement with whichever's coming next. We are entering our spring assessment schedule. Those families that have students in grades 3 through 8, you should be looking for a schedule from your building to let you know when your student will be testing. We ask that families really do their best to not have students miss school on those days. Of course, we do have makeup sessions, but it is challenging to get all of the assessments in. The New Hampshire statewide assessment system is a lengthy assessment. Each section takes about 2 hours. So we just want to try to provide those sessions as efficiently as we can. We are creating those schedules and student rosters now for both the New Hampshire SAS and our last administration of the STAR. And I'm happy to report that I've received a lot of positive feedback from teachers about our transition to iReady. I do really feel like it'll be great as we enter the school year next year with that assessment suite in place. And finally, we're gearing up for our last early release time of the school year. That'll be on May 26th. Students will be dismissed 2 hours early. We will be, like in the previous early release times, we'll be developing differentiated options for our teachers and staff to make sure that we're meeting their specific needs. At that time, we're also planning to offer kindergarten screenings to the class of 2036. So look for more information at our next meeting, and I'll provide an update about what we'll be offering.
Questions or comments? Sounds great. Thank you. Moving on to Assistant Superintendent for Business update.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, I just want to thank the voters for voting in the budget and all the warrant articles and everything like that. It was very much appreciated. And I recall in the voters' guide, we had made mention of the roof at James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School having a couple of leaks. Well, over the weekend with the downpour and everything like that, we were met with today a couple of more leaks. So that is scheduled to be done as soon as everybody leaves, probably around July 4th. The materials are probably going to be delivered to the site before then, as they usually are. So when the contractor comes, they can get to it right away and get it done as quickly as possible. Hopefully, let's have a little bit of a dry summer. We don't want to put ourselves into a drought, but with roofing projects, rain is not our friend, and it elongates the process. And sometimes, most times, any roofing project that I've ever done in this district is right before the kids start rolling in. So I'd like to have a little bit of breathing room this year, but that was definitely appreciated because it's definitely needed. So I just wanted to share. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Questions, comments. Sorry. Great. Moving on to the school board update. And I just want to take a minute to echo what we've heard tonight. Welcome back from what I have always considered the most important vacation, April vacation, because there's just something about the end of April where you just got to get away, and then you've got this final push here to the end of the year. So wishing everyone a great final 6-ish weeks as we close out the school year. And also want to echo next week being Teacher Appreciation Week. Truly one of the cornerstones of all our schools are the incredible teachers and faculty that we have there. And it's really important that we take this week to celebrate the many who are just, in general, always, you can never say thank you enough. So we want to make sure that we as a board thank all of our teachers for all the hard work they do every day and oftentimes in a thankless situation. So we thank them for that. And I saw on the internet, which has never lied to me, that today is School Principals Day as well. I don't know if that's true, but I saw it online, so I'm going to go with that. So we want to make sure to acknowledge our principals as well. And I think that is it for my update. We have that. Yeah, that'll come up. Moving on to student representative update.
Okay, I'm going to cover something that was already kind of covered by Mr. Olson, but we are selling Senior Week tickets this week. Buy them now. This is your only chance to buy them. We're selling them in room 220 after school every day until 3:30. And with Senior Week tickets, every single senior has to get a green field trip card signed. There are no exceptions to that. And you guys need them by a certain date, right? That'll be covered later, but everyone needs a field trip card signed. And if you ordered senior shirts in the second round of ordering, you can come and pick them up when you buy your tickets. And senior signs are also in, so you can come pick them up after school every day this week as well. And that's all.
Questions or comments? Cool, thank you. Moving on to old business. And the only item we have is a brief recap of the town council meeting that Lori and I attended last week. Last week? That sounds right. Where we proposed the idea of potentially moving the voting day for the town of Merrimack back into the month of March. I wouldn't say that idea was received particularly well. There was a lot of understandable, a lot of hurdles that would have to be overcome in order to achieve that. We got a very thorough explanation of the history behind why the voting date has been moved. And with all of the hurdles that would present themselves if we were to make that change, it was in their opinion, the best interest to keep it where it was for now. We did express how it does limit our ability to hire the very best educators out there, as many towns pass their contracts in March, and they didn't see it that way. So it was a good conversation. It didn't work out the way we wanted to, but maybe we'll keep that conversation alive so that way we can take a look at what the possibilities are down the road. Questions or comments?
So one of the town councilors did bring up the point that maybe the school board could be more creative in some of the ways that we are hiring teachers, such as, a scholarship. If you come back to Merrimack and you graduated from Merrimack, you come back to teach, we'll give you a scholarship. There's other things that maybe we could do to stay in the game a little more, and we'll just have to put our thinking caps on, but we appreciate the, out-of-box suggestions.
I just want to make one comment on that. Out-of-box suggestions have to be funded. That requires budget preparation. So I think that has to be a major consideration, that we can't just on the fly to compete with the district around us who just passed a major contract or a major budget. We've already funded what our budget looks like and things like that. So it's not easy unless we put those in as regular items.
If I could, I just want to thank Laurie and Ken for going forward with this. This is something that I've been talking about for a while now, and I appreciate you guys showing support for this. I think the whole concept makes sense. And Laurie, what you said, we'd have to wait until next April 12th in order to get the budget to put the, scholarships in, but then it's going to be too late. So, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and sorry, Naomi, go ahead.
No, it's not on. I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have. I feel like it's probably a thing we should keep kind of thinking about on the back burner. Do we have any data, or can Melissa keep track of any data of the number of times when we're down to the wire hiring someone because, oh no, we can't interview for this position until we know we have the budget, and then keep some records of how often this happens, so that, I don't know if that's, you guys presented any of that to them, but if we can build up this backlog of history, maybe it'll take 5-10 years, but it'll be easier to see oh, this is the way it's actually affecting Merrimack taxpayers and Merrimack residents, because we have this big history of why this would be important.
So we discussed it because it's really 4 weeks But we wouldn't always have the data because, for example, a lot of school districts will do a job fair 4 weeks from now. So we don't even know who we're going to miss because they've already, if there is a job right there and they're like, well, Merrimack is in 4 weeks away, maybe I will get an interview, maybe I'll get the job. That's where we're losing. So we talked to them about that 4 weeks, and they had some legitimate concerns and they did go through the history. However, they didn't feel that 4 weeks had the same stress that we had.
Well, and I think when I say data, that's a data point that you could have is you could have somebody looking, okay, how many towns are having these job fairs? How many have teachers had the opportunities to go to job fairs in 10 other surrounding towns, in 20 other surrounding towns? And how many years in a row do these happen? And if you kind of build that history and that volume of knowledge, it might be more convincing later on.
Amy, can you remind us when you went to the last job fair at SNHU? What was the date on that?
It was around April 15th, and then we went to one at Riv 2 weeks later.
Okay.
But just to add, I think, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, that really what happens is that, and we've had several candidates that accepted positions in other districts because we couldn't offer them an actual contract. And so, we've lost a couple of candidates so far, but the candidates have been great so far this year. But I think it would be a hard number to quantify, to Lori's earlier point, because our postings a lot of them are anticipated. And so if, like the position I'm bringing forward tonight at Thornton's Ferry, that was an anticipated position for a long time. We had a really strong applicant pool, but then people will take a job that it's guaranteed rather than anticipated. So I think it would be a challenge to track that. We can certainly ask Melissa, but I think it's more that people look at the positions, and if they're not definite, they don't really apply.
Well, that's if I could, we can look at dates of hire historically, and they're all in the system, and we can try and pull that out. But if I'm a teacher and I'm going to, let's say, Bedford, right? We always like to use Bedford as an example, correct? And they're offering me a contract versus Merrimack's offering me a conditional contract based upon whether or not the budget is going to pass. And let's say the budget loses and we're in default and we're $1.4 million less. Now we're looking at perhaps the potential for the board to look at the budget once again to come up with another budget, an alternative budget. Then we go through the deliberative session and everything like that. And then that pushes us in the summertime, or we offer them a conditional contract based upon. And if you have a hard contract in your hand versus conditional, where are you going to go? You're going to go where certainty brings you.
Well,
exactly.
I guess I think that's what I was wondering is if we have a way to track like how many times we offer conditional contracts.
I don't know. Have to check.
I'll check with Melissa.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, unless there's any other further discussion, to new business, and something I think we're all very excited about. One of our goals from our meeting this summer is the Pathways to Graduation update.
May I give you a little, and the audience, a little prelude first? Come on up, or Harley. When I first, when I first started in my employment here, I reviewed the programs that we had from pre-K through 12, and I noticed we did not have a program that provided an alternative pathway for a number of students at Merrimack High School, for whom a comprehensive high school education is probably not the most well-suited for their needs. And so we've spent the last 8 or 9, 10 months meeting with high school administration, Amy, Matt, myself. We knew that we needed a person to direct the program, so we constructed a job description that you did approve a number of months ago, and we hired Harley Hall, a high school teacher, and Harley has done an absolutely amazing job, and we're very pleased to be able to say to you that we are on track to implement the beginnings of the program for the 2023-2024 school year, and I think it's going to be one of the most significant improvements to our school system that we've seen in a long time. No grass has grown under Holly's feet, and he has been extraordinarily aggressive in planning. I want to thank Lori also. We wrote a grant. Lori was instrumental in helping Harley, and I participated to a certain degree also in the grant writing, and hopefully we qualify for that grant. But Holly, we're interested in hearing from you because you've done an outstanding job, and we'd love the community to hear what we have planned.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Thank you for having me. I know some of you in some capacities as well. Oh, is it on? Let's try it now. I'm sorry, I have the teacher voice anyway, so your mic's probably picked me up, but for the cameras for sure. I wanted to say thank you. I wanted to cover where we are at with the Graduation Pathways program and kind of a loose shell of what we're looking at and where we're starting, and where kind of the inspiration and the mode of where we're going. Our first goal is to hold on to the students that we have. To keep the students that have left at the rate that has increased over the past few years, to keep them here. That's our first goal, is to keep those students in the building to earn a diploma, whether that is a Merrimack High School diploma or a State of New Hampshire diploma. That is our first goal. And it's just critical because the diploma just opens up so many doors for our students, and we all know that, and I know you understand that. But for those that might be watching, this is not an alternative program. It is not a GED. It is not HiSET. It is a high school diploma. It is not a placement into any type of learning support or special ed. It is not that. There's some misconceptions, so I kind of wanted to address that out for those that are watching it. It does not have the same graduation requirements set forth by the school board for graduation for Merrimack High School. It meets a totally different new RSA for high school graduation set down from the state of New Hampshire. So it is a diploma. It is nothing other than a diploma. So I did want to cover that. And importantly, it will allow our students that have struggled with some of our traditional coursework to take different coursework in the evening while still remaining in the building for most of their courses. So they will be in the building for several periods a day and then transitioning to the courses that they need in the evening. I put up I kind of put the handout there of the credits that are required for graduation. The RSA allows this program to grant elective credits in areas that the traditional high school program cannot do, and there's a breakdown of that up there. The remainder of the core credits are broken down by the same RSA. So these guidelines are from the state. These are the requirements. They do not have to be the same classes as offered in the day program, and for the most part, they will not be the same classes. Some of the exceptions would be economics and civics would be fairly consistent, shorter half credit courses, which would be a version that you would see in the class. But you can look through the bottom list as a way to kind of get an idea of how schools can take life experiences and the experiences of students that have might be struggling or still working and bring those credits into the classwork, into the coursework so they can graduate. So these programs will be held after hours at Merrimack High School. The exact times are being, discussed at this point, but basically this will be a late afternoon to early evening time frame where students will come in and take a class, and these will satisfy their graduation requirements. The classes will last for 15 weeks, so almost a full traditional semester. There will be one in the fall, one in the spring, and within there we will introduce probably in the spring semester the half credit courses that will last 8 weeks as opposed to 15 to meet the electronics, the technical requirements, the civics, and the economics. My office will be located on the rear of the building. It's right next to the football stadium. There's some work to be done. Mr. Olson and I have walked the room, and Tom Tussaud and I have walked the room. So there's will be some work done to get that ready. That's a good summer project that we're looking at now. Excuse me. Specific classrooms will be designated depending on the night. Science would need different facilities to potentially than the other courses. This is a question that I had from several people. We are using as much as we can our own teachers from Merrimack High School or the school district. If they're a middle school teacher who can teach their curriculum, we would be open to that as well. So we want to use our own teachers in this program. They will be highly qualified, meaning they'll be certified to teach those courses. You won't have a social studies teacher teaching a science course or anything like that. That's allowed under the state program, but we're going to shy away from that. Teachers will be paid a stipend for 4 hours a week, and they'll be expected to work with the Pathways students the same way as their day students. They'll have time for teaching and then grading and planning. And the good thing about this program, I think, is probably something that might be underestimated, is the fact that we can change up some of our course offerings. So, for example, an English teacher, instead of teaching English 10 or English 11 or English 12 as our traditional, they can create a course that's based off of student feedback over time, their own particular interests. So they can build a course on dystopian novels. A social studies teacher could build a U.S. history course that focuses on the Cold War, the after effects of the Cold War. Science could teach a course related to forensics, which involves biology and chemistry. So that's not something that we have the leeway to do other than in an elective format at the high school day program. But with the graduation pathways in the adult diploma program, it allows us to do that fairly easy. Adult students will enter. This was a question that I want to make sure we address, because when I say adult students, our first priority is the students that are here. But looking at the rates of dropout over the past 3 or 4 years, and exacerbated by COVID, we've lost a lot of students. So over the summer, one of my tasks will be reaching out to those students. I spoke with 2 school counselors today. I have a list of students that are sitting at 18.5 credits, 19 credits. And these are the students that we can get across the finish line without doing too much extra from them, and getting those last courses that they need. For a student that is adult, we'll transfer all of their credits, we'll review everything and see what they need, and then we'll let them know kind of where they need to go to get their diploma. Dual enrollment students, I'm sorry, I skipped this last part. So that was the last part I just talked about, especially over the last 3 years. COVID-induced students that were already on the bubble that have been pushed out, that have left on their own and early, will be our first focus after the ones that are already here. And I wanted to address the students that are here. So dual enrolled students would be the ones that are taking daytime classes that will be adding to that with their evening class if they decide to go the adult diploma. Adult diploma students who have reached age of majority do not need parental permission, but students under 18 would require parental permission to enter that. This is a cooperation between school counselors, administration, teachers, case managers across the board, all of the stakeholders and parents, especially, that have concerns or think that there might be something that their student could do to make sure that they graduate. And these will be available at the end of the sophomore year. We want to make sure students that might have a rough freshman year don't throw in the towel and decide just to go do something different. We want to make sure they have a chance to adjust and do what's best for them. This is something that I evaluated. I've been to probably 6 or 7 different schools who run these programs. And it's tuition. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here when we're talking about budget with the school board. But current MHS students, we've decided, will not tuition into the evening adult program. If they are a currently enrolled Merrimack student and they need to take English or math, they will take English or math. They are not going to tuition into our program. Students that are not from Merrimack will tuition in using the rate that's pretty standard. So it's $150 for a 15-week course and $80 for an 8-week course. Likewise, if we have this program, our students will probably reach out to other schools and take courses. Maybe they need civics this semester and we don't have civics until the spring and they want to take it now. They could absolutely go to Bedford or Nashua or any of those schools, but they should expect a tuition into their districts. We will not tuition in our own dual enrolled students. They will not be charged any more than what's on there. This is important. So at this point, students who opt for the adult diploma cannot revert back to a Merrimack School District, a Merrimack High School diploma. The English courses, the math courses, the science courses are not the same, and they don't meet the Merrimack High School requirement for courses, so they can't transfer back and forth. The civics and econ, I guess, at some point can, because those are state level courses, but the other ones would not. We've got a lot of work already done. Mr. Olson mentioned the grant. So thank you again to Lori for helping with that. It was my first rodeo. I can't say it was my most favorite experience ever. Not at the top of the things I would like to do again anytime soon, but that was not your fault. It was the nature of the beast. We are actively recruiting teachers, social studies, English, and science. I pretty much have teachers in spot. I'm waiting for some other departments. Paraprofessionals have also reached out. So we have some of those checks. And again, as we've built this, we've effectively identified that we need paraprofessionals, school counselor with a dedicated focus to help us, an administrative assistant to handle some of the state required data entry and those types of things. And we've already established a couple of policies. Work that still needs to be done, a lot. We know that, though. This is coming out, and we will roll this out in September. I will be off the teacher contract as soon as the school year is over, and we'll be back on July 1st. So that is where we stand, and is where we're going into the summer to get things finished up. And I wanted to bring you up to speed, but there is my information for, at least that's the extension until June, the end of June, and then it'll change. But that's where I can be reached now. So I wanted to end there and make sure I addressed any questions you might have.
Yeah, happy to open it up for discussion. Lori?
So first of all, it was my pleasure. You were just such an all-star. You had the depth of knowledge, but looking at it, like coming into this, not really knowing what you were doing, and then just grasping it, and just you gained so much. My only question would be, if we had a adult student, a two, that had a financial need, have we thought about, a scholarship or a program to help somebody that didn't have the $150 to be able to get their, especially if they're a Merrimack dropout and yet they can't afford it? Is there some kind of other funding?
Yes, there will be. I didn't want to get too down into the weeds with my presentation. But there are not spelled out enumerated ways, but that's anticipated, and we will have programs and approaches and policies to deal with students that need to come in and are in that criteria.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Jenna?
I just wanted to commend you for all the hard work that you have done to get this up and running. It's so needed, and I've had the opportunity to work closely with you in talking about ELOs, and I appreciate so much the fact that you have done so much of your own learning to go and see what other districts are doing, to discover best practices, and to really dive deep and learn yourself and make yourself the expert on all of this, because it shows, and we're so grateful for that. And this is so needed, and it's such a gigantic part of making sure that our kids are able to graduate and to go on and to engage in whatever future is ahead of them. And I just want to reiterate as well to Lori, I know there was a pinch where we were like, can we do this grant? And Lori said, yes, we can. And the community should know you didn't have to do that. So as a community, we owe you a debt of gratitude for all the time, effort, and energy that you put into making sure that grant happened. And I'll speak for myself, deeply appreciate that, because this that defrays the costs coming from the taxpayer, and so that's huge. So we're grateful both to you and to Lori, and for all the hard work that you've done getting this up and running.
Thank you.
Lori?
So tagging onto what Jenna said, could you, since we've talked about establishing this program, we've talked about the grant, but we have not explained to the public the financial details of the grant and how it renews and those kinds of things.
Sure, I can speak to that. So the grant is a 3-year grant from the State Department of Education for adult diploma programs. The state has a dedicated focus to our what they call Title II students, the ones that have up and left Merrimack, anybody that's not required to be enrolled, so 19 or 20 years old and onward. And so this grant renews every 3 years. The exact amount is a major question mark because it depends on how many people submitted, what their numbers look like. We don't have numbers, and we addressed that, and we addressed it as best as we could. They asked for a number of students, and of course we don't have that yet. So we forecasted based off of our dropout rates and our students that have left over the past 3 years, which is the window spread that they're looked for their numbers. So we anticipated that, and we're very clear about those being anticipations and nothing solid. And so for this grant will come out every 3 years. So in 3 years again, we will recompete for it. So in a grant this year might be a little higher because we're standing up a program, or it might be lower because we're standing up a program. I wish I could have some prediction to that, but it is not something that I can do. I know everything is submitted, and I've received notification from the state that our packet is good. We are fine, and we are solid. But I don't know how much that grant will be. They range in the neighborhood of this district, the Nashua being the kind of the center district for where we are, and in the New Manchester. They range on the low end for $8,000 a year to the larger programs ranging up into the $75,000 to $80,000 per year of the grant, and that's 3 years of the grant span, and then it recompetes. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer as far as number, but that's the range.
That is a perfect explanation. Thank you.
And I'll echo what many of the board members have said tonight. Really well done. Very impressive work. And thanks again for, I think Lori likes writing grants personally. I think she enjoys it.
Can I tell you, we had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Bill was there every time, and we really had a great time together. And I kept saying to Harley, because sometimes I will push an idea, and Harley was really good with me. He's like, well, maybe that will happen in the future, Lori. It was great.
Yes, we want to keep it focused a little bit as we go through, but I have kept a log of pretty much all of these ideas. And there are things that I would want to do that are long range, 2 or 3 years, 4 years down the road. But to stand this up, I think we need that narrow focus to make sure we're having a good quality, and then let's add and change as we go along as lessons learned.
No. And I just think this is going to open up so many opportunities for people who thought they never would have that opportunity. And I can personally attest to the visits that this man made, because I was sitting in my prep period several months ago, and he came walking in with my ELO director, where I got a chance to meet him. So it's just, he's been all over the state talking to all these different programs and schools. And I think what you've presented here is a perfect place to start, for sure.
I'll just say, I think over the next several years, we'll all be very proud of this program. And you've done an outstanding job.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our next presentation, which is from our Director of Athletics at Merrimack High School, Mr. Mike Sousa.
Yes. And Ken, may I just say as an introduction also, Mike and Principal Steve Clare and I met about 2 months ago, Mike, I think it was?
Yeah, about that. Yep.
And we talked about the fact that coaching is becoming increasingly more demanding and difficult in every school district across the country. And that we thought it would be helpful for Mike to appear before you to provide as much information as possible about the who, what, when, where, and why of high school athletics, coaches, kind of the philosophy of high school athletics. And so we hope you'll find this presentation, and we hope the community will find it very helpful.
So thank you all for having me here tonight. It's just a great opportunity to really talk about, what high school athletics is and what it should be. And this presentation is a bit long. I think you all have the packet in front of you. We won't go through all of it because it will be too long to do that. And I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch. You've got other items that you need to get through. But I think it is important to just understand where high school athletics fits in the realm of athletics in our country, right? Because when you look at athletics in our country, there's a number of different realms. You have your highly competitive club programs and AAU programs, right? Whose focus is to really prepare those kids or those young adults to advance in that sport, right? That is their purpose, right? To get scholarships and to move on, matriculate to college and play at Division I level or whatever, right? Really developing their athletic skills. You have Parks and Rec, tremendous program, right? I wish more of our kids would take more advantage of our rec programs here in our community. But it's a tremendous program to give kids the base knowledge of a sport, to expose them to different things, right? And to have fun along the way, right? That's a huge part of recreation athletics, which isn't necessarily part of club athletics, right? So where does high school athletics fit? Well, we've got feet in both worlds. And that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about today, is how we're different from those other two realms, where one is win at all costs and one is let's have fun, right? And where do we fit, right? And so I think that's really important. When I coached, I came up with this to kind of give our parents and our kids an idea of what we believed, right? So we wanted to set our priorities properly in athletics, in high school athletics. And so I always told our kids that our priorities are threefold: family, school, sport. And then everything else goes after that, right? Family being the most important thing, right? Because you've got one family in your life. And if there's a family emergency, that has to take priority over anything else, right? So family is first. Your academics have to be second, right? We're a school. We're here to educate. And so academics comes second. Then your sport comes third. And then everything else in your life is after that, right? Because you're making a commitment to a sport at this level in high school. So that's our priorities. Our purpose is really about teaching these young men and women the life skills that they need so that they're prepared for all of the challenges that we have all faced in our lives, right? All of the things that life throws at you at times. We're trying to prepare them for those things through sports. And then obviously we want to carry ourselves properly with our behavior. So sportsmanship is at the forefront of everything that we do, right? So that's kind of, our philosophy of where we're going. Where education-based athletics is different is that we are essentially educational, right? Our whole goal and our purpose is to enhance the academic mission of the school, to be in lockstep with the academic mission of the school, and to teach our kids some of the soft skills that maybe they're not learning in the classroom that employers or colleges and universities are looking for, right? Some of those time management skills, those conflict resolution skills, the working as a teammate, learning how to handle adversity, learning how to handle success, right? All of those things are some of those soft skills that we're trying to teach through our athletic programs. This quote really spoke to me when I heard Carissa Nyhoff say this in a webinar that I was part of. Carissa Nyhoff is the CEO of the NFHS, which is the National Federation of High School Athletic Associations. So they're basically our governing body, right? And she stated this, that high school sports have become too focused on performative and not enough on formative, right? We want to bring it back to the formative part of things. And that doesn't mean that we're not going to try to compete to win, right? I think sometimes people hear the fact that, we're going to be all formative based, and they're thinking that we don't care about winning. Well, that's not true. The goal of high school sports is still to win. It's just not our purpose, right? Our purpose is in the development of our young men and women. And that's what we're trying to get accomplished, right? So we're trying to make sure that our kids become better students, better people, better teammates, better communicators, right? That's our purpose. That's what our goals are. To teach them how to handle time, pressure, in particular today. I think if there's one thing that COVID taught me now is how hard it is for our kids to handle the pressure that they're under and how much pressure they are under. Because you think about, and I talk to our coaches about this all the time, our kids are under so much stress. Family obligations, academic obligations. Many of our kids play multiple sports and they're getting pulled in multiple directions by their coaches, right? And they want to satisfy everybody. There's a lot of pressure there. How do we teach them to manage that? How do we teach them to handle that in a different way? How do we teach them how to handle adversity? Because life is full of it. We're all going to face stuff in life that's not easy. How do we face that? How do we get through that? How do we handle setbacks? How do we handle success? Some of our kids handle it really, really well. Others, they struggle with that part of it, right? And we want to teach them that. And how do they handle failure? I think we're so worried about failure that we don't allow our kids to fail. And this is the best environment to do that because it's safe. It's safe to fail in athletics. And we try to teach them it's not failure, it's a learning opportunity for you to improve and get better, right? It's not necessarily failure. And I think if anybody has been following the NBA playoffs, and I'm not a huge NBA fan, but I am a basketball fan. And, one of the best players in the game, Giannis Antetokounmpo, was questioned after they lost their first round game by a reporter saying, was this a failure? Was this season a failure? And he's taken a lot of heat for his response because he said it was not. Every time you go out there and compete, you have the opportunity to learn. And it's really about the learning. And, he's going to take the experience that he had this past season and apply it to his preseason preparation so that next year they come back better, right? Maybe more prepared, right? Maybe they'll get further. But sometimes you can't control that because the other teams are doing the same thing, right? And talent isn't always equal. But we need to teach our kids that it is okay to fail. It is okay to make mistakes. Athletics is a great environment to do that. When I was coaching, I would tell my kids in practices, if you're not making a number of mistakes in practices, you're staying too much in your comfort zone. You're not stretching yourself. You're not becoming better. So push yourself to try to do more, right? I think that's unbelievably important. So our goals, and we talked a little bit about this, is to provide students with an opportunity to grow, learn, achieve, and fail in an environment of minimal risk, in a safe place, right? This is not life or death, right? This isn't, if I don't pass this exam, I'm not going to graduate, right? This is a safe environment for them to learn these things and learn these skills. What I love about our programs is they've been all-inclusive. They've provided opportunities for kids that have never looked at that sport before. And obviously some sports are different than others in that realm, right? You can't just jump onto a varsity baseball team if you've never played baseball before, right? But there are other sports that you can. Swimming is a perfect example of that. I can remember it was my first year as the athletic director, and we had a kid on our swim team who didn't know how to swim. And by his senior year, that coaching staff got him racing. What a huge success that is. I look at our bowling program, who just won the state championship. Been knocking on the door of that for a few years now, but knocked the door open this year. But what I love about their program is you look at that team and you see kids from all kinds of different walks of life. Kids that wouldn't necessarily be together in any place other than the bowling alley. And I love that about sport and some of the programs that we have. Obviously, we're trying to promote fitness. Again, that goes hand in hand with what our PE department tries to do, right? So we're trying to promote that. And we talked about some of these other things about handling, pressure and stress and all that stuff. A couple of years ago, I read the book Grit and by Angela Duckworth, and this quote jumped off the page at me. And so I share this with all of the families and all of our coaches every time I meet with them, because I think it's unbelievably important to have this focus that all children really need the same thing. Appropriately demanding challenges. Sometimes we don't want to challenge our kids that much, but they need that. And in reality, they want that. In combination, though, with consistently warm and respectful support. And it's that combination. And I'm trying to get our coaches to understand you can challenge kids. You can push them to be better. As long as at the back end of that, you're supporting them. If they slip up or they mess up, you're there to pick them up, right? Shout praise, whisper criticism. You'll see that in another slide. It's one of the things that I tell my coaches all the time. If you need to, criticize a kid or correct a kid, you want to pull that kid aside and you want to do it quietly. Nobody wants to be embarrassed in front of their peers, right? But if somebody did something great, shout it to the rooftops. Make sure everybody hears it, because I think that's tremendously important. And it just builds this culture of positivity, which is what we're trying to gain from this. I do a lot of reading. And another book that I've been reading and will continue to read is a book called Every Moment Matters. And it was really striking. because the person that wrote this was a soccer coach and, wrote about an interaction that he had with a player of his who had formerly played for him in high school. And he reached out to his former coach because he was applying to med school at the University of Vermont, and he wanted to thank his coach for, being there for him and all the lessons that he taught him. And this coach, John O'Sullivan, had an epiphany after that conversation and it was, wow, this is frightening. Because he had a wonderful relationship with that young man, but he didn't have a wonderful relationship with necessarily every one of his athletes. And yet here's this young man who held on to everything he said and everything he did. And so in his head, he's like, so did every other athlete of mine. And I wasn't as good to those as I was to him. And it was a huge epiphany for him. And so I'm trying to stress to our coaches that everything you do, everything you say, every moment that you spend with one of our kids is impactful. You can have a positive impact or you can have a negative impact, and that could be lasting. And it's not to put them on notice to be so careful like they're walking on eggshells all the time, but I want them to understand that it's important, the interactions that we have with young people, because they listen to us, sometimes more than the other adults in their lives. We stress the fun, right? There's got to be, kids have to have fun. When you think about the withdrawal of kids from athletics and you talk to kids about it, it's because they're not having any fun or they lost the fun. We got to bring that back. Fun looks differently for different kids, right? And for sometimes, it's about, well, I'm not playing much, right? So why would I be here? It's not fun anymore. Right? We want to try to get kids to recognize and value participation in some way, because at some point they will play. Maybe they're not quite ready. Maybe they've got a strong senior class ahead of them, and they're a junior and they're on varsity. Right? That happens all the time. Next year might be their year, but we want them to appreciate and value their participation. And we always want our coaches to focus on the students, because this quote jumps out at me too. You coach a child, not a sport. Because if we're really thinking about this in terms of the development of young people, that's what it's about, right? You're coaching the child, not the sport. We're using the sport as the tool. So Amanda Bissick from George Washington University did a study a number of years ago about what kids want and the fun pieces of sport, or what makes sports fun. And when it came down to positive coaching, there's all these categories. It's quite the study. This is where things ranked with what kids want from their coaches. First and foremost, they want respect and encouragement. That's what they want. And that's what we're trying to give them, as much as we can. And it's certainly the message that I give to my coaches. They want a positive role model. For some kids, they don't necessarily have that at home. Others do. They have wonderful parents. But it's always good to have another strong adult in their lives that helps to shape them. Clear and consistent communication, that comes up all the time. I think where coaches trip up at times, it's in their communication. It's rarely in the other areas. And it's not that other areas don't trip them up from time to time, but it's typically in either a lack of communication or unclear communication. And so we're working with our coaches on that being more consistent, and we've given them some tools with which to do that. Most of our coaches now, and we're trying to roll this out to everybody, will have an SAU email address so that they communicate through that with families. We have been using a program called Remind.com as a communication platform that is safe for our kids and for our families. And we're piloting a new program that's called Sports U, which is actually a little bit more user-friendly than Remind. And so we have a number of different platforms for coaches to communicate with both kids and with the families. And so we're trying to work on that. Knowledge of the sport is fourth. When you think about things, I think most people would think that kids want a coach that knows the sport really, really well. And I think as you adjust with ages, that creeps up a little bit more. I think when you're dealing with high school kids, I think that would probably go up to number 2 or number 3 on the list. But in this study, it was 4th because this study ranged from kids ages 9 to 18, right? So it was a big range. I think with the older kids, that bumps up a little bit. They certainly want somebody who's knowledgeable with the sport, and they want somebody that listens to them, right? What kid didn't or doesn't? That was the thing that I learned the most as a school counselor for 9 years. Sometimes just being there and listening is the most important thing, and giving them your time. So those are the things that kids are telling us that they want. So what is quality coaching? And this comes from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Quality coaching is the consistent application of integrated professional, interpersonal, and intrapersonal knowledge to improve athletes' competence, confidence, connection, and character in specific coaching contexts. It's relational. It's all about relationships and how to internally manage what they're feeling. But if you as a coach don't have a good relationship with a kid, that's going to be hard to help this kid manage through, right? But it's all about relationships. And this is, again, one of the things that we talk about all the time with our coaches. It's a relational business. What are you doing to develop relationships with your kids? And I'll tell them, those relationships don't happen overnight, and they certainly will less likely to happen in the midst of a competitive, contentious season. Relationships are built in the off season. That's when they're built. What are you doing with your athletes? How are you communicating with your athletes in the off season? One of the best experiences I ever had as a coach and how I was able to develop relationships with my athletes was opening the weight room for them and getting in there with them and doing strength and conditioning programs, because they got to see me in a different way and I got to learn about them differently as well. It was a wonderful experience. I encourage more of our coaches to do some of that, because that's important. So these are the things that we value, and we talked about some of these, the experiences of all of our students, widespread participation. We want more kids to participate in athletics. We find value in them. Develop a sense of responsibility, build strong connections with our community. We have some programs that do an unbelievable job with community service. Others that need to pick that up a little bit more, and continue to enhance the academic mission of the school. Teach sportsmanship, foster teamwork, model dedication. I don't think any of our coaches don't do that piece of it, right? For what they get paid, for the amount of time that they spend with our kids, that is dedication. Teach time management. Playing a sport is hard. You get out of school 2:15. I think about our ice hockey team who, might travel to Keene for an 8:30 game at night in the middle of the week. Talk about having to learn how to time manage, because you still have school the next day. You still have work that needs to be done. Maybe you have an exam that you need to prepare for. That's tremendously important. And we try to use every circumstance to build better citizens, better people. Those are our principles. That's our purpose. So to that, we have 71 paid coaches. We have more coaches than that, but we have 71 paid this year. That's going to shift a little bit. It shifts a little bit every year. Over 21 sports and 47 teams. 27 of those coaches are employed by our district. I would love to see that number go way up. I think coaches in the building, coaches in the district, coaches that know our community are just more effective, especially early on, right? Coaches can learn things, but that takes some time. We have 9 coaches that are educators in other districts. So when you think of it, we have 36 coaches that are educators out of 71. It's not enough. We need to find a way to get more educators involved in our athletic programs. Because back in the day, that was standard, right? I can remember when I first got into coaching, Nashua wouldn't hire a coach unless you taught in the district. Those days are so far gone now, even for them. You know, we need to try to bring some of those back. We have 539 years of combined experience in our coaches. It's tremendous. There's a lot of working knowledge there. And I broke it down by sports season. And obviously, you know, some of our programs have more coaches than others, and that's why there's a difference between them. These numbers are going to change next year too, because we're looking for, you know, new positions already for the fall. And so some of these numbers are going to change. But we have a tremendous coaching staff with a lot of good experience. 30 of our 71 coaches have at least 5 years of high school coaching experience, which I value so much because education-based athletics, as I said earlier, is different. It's different than high-level club or AAU. It's different than Parks and Rec. It's different from town travel. You know, because there are other things that we're expecting our coaches to do with our athletes, other lessons that we want them to teach that are outside of just the sport. And so, you know, having that experience within the high school environment is tremendously important, whether they've learned that by coaching here in our district or they coached at a different district and then came here. I'd like to see that number increase, and it will naturally, but I'd like to see that number increase just because it gives us a better basis of our coaches' understanding of education-based athletics and what we expect of them. I'm going to not go through all the coaching responsibilities because you have all that stuff in the packet, and that could go a long time. But I do want to talk about, since it was brought up, you know, coaching evaluations. So when I got this job 6 years ago, to the best of my knowledge, and I don't know this for a fact because it wasn't shared with me if there was no system of evaluating coaches. And so I kind of had to try to figure that out on my own, knowing that it was important, even though in the 11 years that I coached in another district as the head coach, as a varsity coach, in 2 sports, I was never evaluated, not once. I still feel that that is an important component to growth. And getting that feedback is incredibly important. So when I took the job the first year, I didn't evaluate anybody because I didn't even know how I was going to do that yet, right? And then we began the process of really kind of informal conversational evaluations with coaches. It was really about, you know, an end of season wrap up meeting. And I would have that with each of the coaches at the end of their seasons. And just talk about the things that went well, the things that they struggled with, the things that I observed, the things that we need to do better. And that's how it was. And it was just conversational. We transitioned to something a little bit more formal. It was still conversational based, but then we took notes and I kept records on file and things like that in 2020 and 2021. And now we've really developed a way to do it, and it will continue to evolve because I think it needs to. But a few years ago, I wrote a coach's handbook, which, as far as I know it existed way back in the day when Joe Raycraft was the athletic director in Merrimack, because I found his old coach's handbook buried someplace in that office. But from that point in time to whenever I wrote it 3 years ago, I think it was, there was nothing for our coaches to go by, no expectations to follow. So I put together a coach's handbook. It's pretty comprehensive. It's 42 pages long, and it gets updated annually if there are things that need to be tweaked or adjusted in it. It goes out to them every year before every season, along with their reminders of all their certifications that they have to maintain. And we do expect them to read it and understand it and know it. Because failure to abide by, you know, what's in that coach's handbook would be reason enough to non-renew a coach, right? So how do we do evaluations? Well, they're multifaceted as best as they can be. And so they're based on, obviously, my evaluations or my observations of the coaches during practice sessions that I attend. And I'm at several. I'm clearly not at all of them. I couldn't possibly be. There's a lot of things going on at the same time. But practices every home game when I'm not dealing with a rowdy crowd, which I oftentimes am, but I'm evaluating how they handle game situations, how they interact with the kids during games. We get input from athletes. If you ever walk through the school, typically between 9 o'clock in the morning and 12:45 in the afternoon, you will see kids in my office. And we talk about their experiences. And this is a consistent thing every day, all year. But on top of that, we do a feedback survey to the student athletes. So I used to just post it on the website, ask them to go to the link and click it and blah, 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 and nobody did it. And so I decided instead of doing that, I'm going to personally email the link to each and every athlete on every team. And so that's what I've been doing. There are times that we get tremendous response, and there are times that we get very, very little response. And so it's not super helpful yet. I hope as we continue to do it, more and more kids will take part in it. It is anonymous. We do it that way intentionally. I don't share the actual survey with the coaches because with the questions that are asked, coaches are intuitive people, right? They could kind of figure out who might have written certain things or rated them certain ways. And I never want that to be an option. And so typically what I do is I take the survey and I break it down and I just, in a Word doc, here's the question, here's the ratings. Here's the next question, here are the ratings. And I share that with the coach. So they know how they've been rated, but they don't know who rated them and have no identifying information. Because I really want to protect the identity of those students. So that they can feel free to provide valuable feedback on their experience. Because I think that's important. Their voice is the most important voice to me. And the purpose of this is not necessarily to non-renew coaches. The purpose of this is to help them grow. That's what this is about. Are there times when this will lead to non-renewal? Sure. If we've exhausted all of the other avenues that we've tried to help coaches to improve, then it certainly would go to a non-renewal. But that really should be the last resort. Our coaches are working really hard to do what they feel is best for our kids. And they put in a lot of time and effort to do that. And so we want to try to support them, give them the opportunity to grow, provide them the resources with which to grow if there are areas that they need growth in. And I would say that there isn't anybody that doesn't have areas that they need growth in. So there's always something for a coach to work on for the next year. So I think that's really, really important because at the end of the day, leadership is influence, and they are the leaders of their program, and they're influencing these young men and women. And so we want them to be the best leaders that they can be and provide our kids with the best experience that they can have.
Great. I will open it up to questions, comments, and discussion. Laura?
So I appreciate you putting the slides in about the evaluations. You list parental feedback, but here's my concern. The 2 years I've sat on this board, we've received numerous emails from parents. Now, I was a student athlete all my growing up years. I've had a couple of my kids who were fantastic athletes, my others who didn't want to play sports at all. I get it when parents complain about playtime and stuff like that, but that's not the emails we've been receiving for 2 years. These emails are consistent with similar teams and coaches, and the parents do not feel like they're being heard. And that's why they have reached out to this board. So my question is, I like that evaluations are used for growth, but at what point do we say it's time to cut bait? We have athletes who are leaving teams because of the coach, and they've expressed that openly. And we have parents who are regularly emailing the superintendent and this board over the same coaches. And that's over 2 years, not just recently.
So it really depends on the circumstances that you're talking about, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to gather feedback from everyone, not just from a handful of parents that might be complaining about a coach, or, a handful of kids that might not have a great experience with a coach, because that's going to happen, right? So we're taking a look at the totality of things, not just isolated instances, right? And so if at the end of the day, the majority of our kids are having a good experience, then we're going to work with that coach to develop a better relationship with maybe the ones that he's not having a great experience with him, right? Or her, right? That's the goal here. We want to make sure that because we want everybody to be served and we want everybody to be heard, right? But oftentimes, the only resolution for some people is that the coach has to be removed. It's the only thing that they're looking for. And if we do anything other than that, then we haven't done our job, which is not necessarily true.
I agree with you. So do you have a formal, like you did with the athletes, is there a formal anonymous feedback way to get, like surveys like we do for everything else, do parental surveys for every team? Then you can collate the data and see, is it just a handful or is it larger, and every parent participate?
Sure. I mean, we've never done that in the past. It's easily done. I have a framework already done for that if we wanted to roll that out.
I think that would give you good data.
Jenna and then Lori. Go ahead.
So we go way back.
We do.
I've had 3 Merrimack High School athletes over 10 seasons in 3 sports. So I definitely concur with so much of what's been said. The first thing I want to say is, can we get a copy of the coach's handbook?
Absolutely.
I would love to see what's in there.
Yep.
And so that's my first thing. I actually wrote down 30 questions, so I might need to follow up with you another time on some of my less pressing questions.
Yeah.
But so on slides 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 24, I literally wrote, do we evaluate on this? Because just like with teachers and with students, we should be very clear going into any season with any coach, this is what you are going to be evaluated on. And it's all in this packet.
Yes.
We obviously need to clean it up and condense it or whatever. But this is what you are going to be evaluated on at the end of this season.
Correct.
Communicate it clearly to them. Then make sure our feedback survey for students asks questions related directly to these things. And then we have a feedback survey for parents asking the same types of questions. Because 3 kids, 10 seasons, 3 sports, I've only ever remember receiving 1 evaluation. And I definitely would have and always will fill those out. So I think there's room to grow here. Because, definitely. I mean, not only are my kids involved in these sports, their friends are, and I hear it all. I hear it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the fantastic, the really not great. I hear it all. So those are the things that we need to try to capture, because you're right. I remember certain very specific situations where whole groups of half of one team hated the coach, half of one team loved the coach. And we do have to try to sort through what's real and what's not. Right. But the only way to do that is to have a very clear, very delineated process for that informs the coach. This is what we're going to talk. This is what we're testing for. This is what we expect. We're going to ask students and we're going to ask parents, because my also experience is my student is going to cush it because they're afraid they're going to be found out. I will not cush it. I'm going to tell you the God's honest truth, because I want, if I think there needs to be a change, I want there to be a change. Or if I never want that coach to leave, I'm going to make sure I never want that coach to leave because they're fantastic or whatever. The other thing I think is, I know at the beginning of every season, there is a meeting for parents and for athletes. Is there a meeting for coaches?
There is.
Good. I'm glad. Where those expectations can be gone over.
They were. So a lot of this presentation are pieces of the presentation that I provided to our coaches in August, as well as to our parents at the parent meetings. So there are components of both presentations into this one. So yes, the expectations are outlined for them. The other thing that we make sure of is that within that coach's handbook, Any survey that we're going to send out for students is in there, so the coaches understand what questions are going to be asked of their student athletes. If we do a parent survey, that would be in the coach's handbook too, up front, so that they know. The evaluation tool is in the coach's handbook, so that they know the things that they're going to be evaluated on.
Yeah, and that was going to be my last question: is can we see those things?
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
like to see the handbook. I would like to see the surveys that go out, because the only other thing I remember is filling out the survey thinking they're not asking the right questions. As a parent, I remember thinking there was an issue and they weren't asking the right questions, and they never would capture it. So there's that. I'd love to be able to follow it. The only last thing I want to say is, and I know you and I and other people in the district have talked about this before, and it kind of dovetails into the next thing on the agenda, but I'd love to see some sort of a parent advisory committee created where we can have parents from different sports on a committee that helps to talk about how we can improve athletics, how can we improve coaching culture. These are parents that are dialed in, that are invested, involving students, involving community members. I really think we have a good foundation, but we have some real building blocks I think we need to put in place to make sure that the experience for parents and students is excellent.
So we're actually piloting something along those lines. It's not going to encompass all of athletics, but I've invited Lori to be a part of it. One of the things that we've really struggled with since COVID hit is the decline in participation in our girls' sports in particular, and their struggle in a lot of ways with mental health. And so we are getting a group of coaches, parents, administrators together. We're going to meet at least initially once a month. We're going to meet May 16th is our first meeting at 5:30. And we're going to start to toss around ideas of what's going on and how can we make it better for our kids, right? So we are starting to do some of those things. COVID has thrown a wrench in everybody's lives in a number of different ways and has put hold on things that we wish we were able to do sooner. So this is our first step.
I'd just like to say publicly that I'd love for that to expand to not just be targeting towards girls, which I think is fantastic. Like, I love, that you're involving Lori, and I love that it's going to be targeted, certainly if we're seeing decline with girls, but I think it needs to be a widespread across the board total look at how we can create a better experience for all athletes.
And it can get there, but we needed to start someplace. I think sometimes if you try to make it bigger too quickly, then you don't accomplish as much as you want to. So we have a really clear focus of what we're trying to accomplish with this particular group initially. And then once we've felt like we've got a good handle on that, that can now expand.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Lori.
Hi, Mike.
Hello.
So I was fortunate enough in 2016 and 2017 to be a part of the NHIA self-assessment tool for creating athletic culture through the life of an athlete. So I was able to write an assessment tool that would help schools to look at their athletic programs. Are we engaging? Because I feel like the conversation is what we lost is, first of all, athletics is a privilege. It's not a right. It's a privilege. And we need to recognize when those kids come out, it's a privilege. It's different than teaching. It's different than other things. And today I felt like there was a lot of emphasis on everybody's rights except for the coach's rights. We don't have enough people that want to coach. And then you're asking everyone in the world to give them an evaluation. And we have to engage them, and we have to empower student leadership. We have to have good communication. Those preseason meetings are really important. And if there's a legitimate concern, then we have to figure out how to take care of that legitimate concern. Because like Lori said, we do not want to read information unless it's relevant to us about, an athletic team. We want that to be taken care of over here, and we want that to be that way. But it is for a student athlete to get to where we want them to be, there has to be discipline. There has to be a focus on core values. There has to be respect, responsibility. And if we're letting the kids I'm going to get evaluated if this student athlete isn't happy, they're going to give me a bad evaluation. It can't be that way. It can't. It has to be an overall picture. And 1/3 of those kids are not going to be happy because guess what? They're sitting on the bench.
Right.
And so the coach somehow has to get those kids to understand their importance, because learning happens on that bench, whether we know it or not. But they have to understand it. But they go, well, I'm just going to write a bad evaluation. I think that we have to have deeper conversations, because I understand your point, but I think that we also have a lot of coaches' positions open, and we have people flooding out of the coaching. You want to talk about critical shortages? Varsity coaches is a critical shortage, and the coaches need to have the tools, and they need to have the support, and they can't feel like everyone's doing an evaluation on them. That's not, it should be, the evaluation should come from you, not the athletic trainer, not the parents, maybe student athletes. I coached for 25 years. I know as a varsity coach that I love my teams, but I know that I didn't make everyone happy all the time. And so if that student was going to be the one that was going to write something and you were going to tell me, well, hey, Lori, this student wrote this about you. Well, let's talk about the 75% that went on to play in college and learn what I wanted them to learn. That's my point.
Questions or discussion? Oh, Lori, go ahead.
I just want to tell a story to go along with what Lori was saying. My son, my youngest son, who just graduated from high school a year ago, never played baseball, never. Rec teams were on Sunday. We had commitments on Sunday, so he never got to play in town, in the towns that we lived in. He decided to go out for baseball. And this is, of course, another school. And he practiced hard. And he was terrible, but he worked hard. And he was always there. He never missed a preseason weight training session. He never missed a practice. He never missed a game. He sat the bench most of those games. But his coach was constantly encouraging him at practice, constantly telling him, you can get better at this. This is what you need to do. I want you to work on these things. I know you can do it. His senior year, he did get to play more, and they went almost undefeated. And he, both years, received the Servant's Heart Award. Not because he was a good player, not because he was a VIP, not because he had the highest RBI, but because he never gave up. And that is what we're looking for. He was frustrated. Yes, he wanted to play, but he would have never evaluated his coach poorly because of the encouragement his coach gave him. Tough love and encouragement. And I think that is what we're looking for. And even if you have an athlete who's upset or angry, if you got 75, 80% of the team who's saying, yeah, I'm sitting the bench too, but hey, I like the coach, then that can all be taken together. And that's what I like that you said. It's the way the student athletes, you're collecting that data. And that's, I think, an appropriate way to do that. And I think that's the parent side of it. You can filter through what is playtime complaints and what is legitimate concerns.
Yeah, for sure. The hard thing that we're facing right now, at least in my conversations with kids and in my observations, is that kids, even if the coach is encouraging during practice, even if the coach is doing the right things by the kid, if the kid doesn't play, they're having a really hard time with that, right? And their families are having a hard time with it. And I get it, because these families are coming to the games, right? They want to see their kid play. So even if the coach is doing all of those things and trying to value the kid's role on that team and participation on that team, it's not always received that way, right? And that is where it gets really tricky, and it's trending more in that direction as opposed to less. I can remember when I was in high school and I got cut from my high school basketball team, and I would have given anything to wear that uniform and wouldn't have cared if I spent a minute on the court. It's a different time today. Kids are still kids, but it's a different time, and they value things differently. And I think that's a part of the reason why we're seeing some withdrawal from athletics, is that if they see or they project that they're not going to play much, then it's not worth their time. We got to try to get them back, because I think there's just so many lessons that can be learned through athletics that their time is worth it in that environment.
And I think that goes along with some of our goals as a board to really build a culture of resiliency in our schools, that our SEL, our academic, our support services, and our athletic and music and drama programs are building resiliency.
Yep.
And I think with that culture, you'll have, long term, more coming back, because it's the resilient student who says it's still worth to be at practice. It's still worth it to be here, even though I may not get all the playtime I want.
Right. And we're trying to equip our coaches with the tools with which to do that, right? And to make sure that, they're emphasizing those things with their student athletes, and that they're valuing everybody's role on the team, right? And that's sometimes where, I'm not going to say that the coaches aren't valuing kids' roles, but sometimes the communication, as I said earlier, the communication is where it breaks down, right? The communication isn't consistent, isn't clear, right? And when I have, meetings with parents and kids and coaches, I'll tell them, I'm not going to get involved with playing time decisions. Those are part of the coach's purview. My role is to facilitate the communication, to make sure that it's clear, that you both have the opportunity to be heard, right? Doesn't mean you're going to agree. We end this meeting and there may not be agreement, but at least you can't say that you haven't been heard. Both sides, because there are always two sides to everything, right? Sometimes there's three, because sometimes the kid and the parent aren't exactly aligned, right? And so that happens too. So we try to facilitate that. I'd like to do more of that. Typically, we don't have the opportunities, because when kids and families have an issue with a coach or a circumstance, they hold on to it and they wait until the end of the season or some arbitrary date down the road, and then they'll bring it up. And it's, well, I can't affect change at that point in time, right? And at that point in time, in that family's mind anyway, the only resolution is to non-renew the coach. But the coach may never have even known that there was an issue, because we've never had the opportunity to address it in the moment when it happened. And I understand the reasons for that too, right? Families and kids are worried about repercussion. They're worried about they're gonna lose playing time, or their role on the team is gonna be diminished or whatever. My kickback to that would be, if it's such a miserable experience already, how can it be worse? So let's meet. Let's have that meeting.
Speaking to that, you mentioned that you have a coach's handbook. Do you have a similar player's handbook that says something to that effect?
So we do.
If you have a problem with a coach or a decision, this is what you do.
Yeah, and that's posted on the athletic page of the website. It's something that we had and have a co-curricular agreement that I'm hoping that we can work through at some point over the summer and revise that, because I don't think it's been rewritten since 2010. But I can't write policy, obviously, but I can write guidelines, right? So I wrote guidelines and embedded the co-curricular agreement within those guidelines as well, so that when the families sign off on the co-curricular agreement, they're really signing off on everything that we wrote in that guideline. And it outlines all of those things, including, what it means to be a member of a varsity team, and what does playing time look like at the varsity level? What does it look like at the JV and freshman levels, right? Because they're different. How do we handle vacations, right? What's the expectation during vacations? And if you miss, athletic events during vacation because your family went away, what are the repercussions for that, right? So all of that stuff is outlined in those guidelines.
So going back, I do think there will be times when there is a legitimate concern too. I mean, so we're saying sometimes that, it might be playtime, it might be something else, student bullies someone, but there are going to be concerns that parents have that are legitimate. So making sure that there's a way that they can communicate that, because all of us have heard, well, we don't want our student athlete to be somehow penalized if we come forward. So like you said, they wait until their kids are graduating, they're seniors, they're no longer part of the program. We're not going to fix that program
Right.
if they wait to have that conversation either. So if there is a way that parents can have a voice, if it's a legitimate concern early, like whatever that is, I think that would be important.
Yeah, I would encourage them to reach out to me if they have a legitimate concern. You know, in the way we handle any investigation, in particular, if it is, you know, if we think it's pretty severe, right? We'll suspend the coach pending the investigation, right? And we've done that before. You know, so we'll suspend the coach. We'll do the investigation. When we do investigations like that, it's never just me. You know, it's always me and another administrator in the building. And we'll do our due diligence, and then we'll make a determination from there, you know, based on what the allegations might be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Jenna.
So I just want to say, you know, I agree with all what you're saying, and I really appreciate your story, because I do think that, you know, for the 1/3 of the kids that, you know, like you said, sit on the bench, you can be a kid that sits on the bench and know exactly why, because your coach has communicated it to you in a respectful way that values you.
100%.
If that's not happening, we need to know.
Yep.
And I would say there's a lot of times that's not happening. So that's what part of that is, right? That feedback is valuable. I sat the bench and my coach never told me why.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, those are important things to find out.
And it's important to find out that early, right? Because then I can help with that.
People don't trust the process.
I get it.
I don't know how to make that better, but we have to find a way. I speak from experience.
Yep.
I didn't trust the process.
Sure.
I didn't. I have a high level of trust with this district. I know other people who feel the same way. So there are times when we have to find a way, and whether it's an anonymous, I don't know how to do it. I don't. But we need to find a way to make it so that a student or a parent that has a legitimate concern that isn't about playtime can be addressed in a way that they can feel like they're not going to be retaliated against.
Sure. No, I 100% agree with that. 100%.
Yeah, I know you do. But I'd really like to see it happen.
I just when I took this position, you know, I didn't know, my own naivety, I guess. I didn't know the volatility that I was going to experience in this position, right? Because, you know, I coached for a very, very long time, and you know, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I was the best tactical or technical coach in either of the sports that I did coach. I think I was really good with kids, right? And so at the end of the day, never, not once, did my athletic director summon me into his office to have a conversation about, you know, a complaint. Never. The other thing that I didn't realize is how needy some of our coaches are, and how my phone never stops, because I never reached out to my athletic director ever, unless it was really an emergency, right? So I got into this role, and I'm like, wow, this is so different than what my experiences have been as a coach, what my experiences were as an educator, as a school counselor, just so different. And managing or trying to facilitate all of the different stakeholders that all should have a voice and all should have value, including our coaches, is a difficult task. When you think about, you know, obviously our most important piece is our kids, right? Their voice is really so important to me, and which is why I have conversations with them all day, every day. But I do want to hear from parents. I had some really good meetings with kids and parents this year, with coaches. You know, I think we can do a lot if we facilitate more of that type of communication when there is an issue. Let's sit down at the table and let's talk about it with respect and dignity, and understanding that we may not at the end agree, right? Because we might not, but let's talk about it. So that we can make the experience better for your son or daughter, because that's what we want to do, right? Because if it's not fun, they're not gonna do it, and we want more kids involved as opposed to less. You know, and I'll share one more thing. I know you want to move on, but this is what I'm trying to get my coaches to understand. one of the highlights of my coaching career, and I was fortunate enough to have a couple of teams that won state championships, and that was wonderful. That was not the highlight for me. One day, it must have been in the summer, because I remember I was at home still, and so I was still a school counselor in this district at the time, and I got a text message from a former player of mine who had graduated 5 years earlier. So he had gone through college, he had graduated, he was in his professional career, and he was in New York with his company, and they were at a leadership seminar. And he sent me a text, and he said, "Coach, they are teaching me everything that you taught us when we were in high school playing basketball for you." That made my life, because that's what I tried to do as a coach. Yes, as a coach, I tried to prepare them to win every game. You know, that's still a goal, right? That we keep score for a reason. In every athletic event, the goal is still to win games, right? But the purpose behind what I was doing was so much bigger than that. And sometimes as a coach, you don't know the impact that you're making on kids until they're 5, 6, 7 years removed from you, and then they reach back out. So, and I'm fortunate. I've got a lot of former players that still reach out to me on a regular basis, and I hope, and I've seen it with some of our other coaches, because I see the kids coming back, right? They come back to practices. They come back to interact with our coaches. So I know they've had that kind of impact on some of our population. We want to expand that to more.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
I appreciate it.
Right. Okay. Moving on. Next item under new business is the 2023-2024 school board assignments. So I guess I just read them down. Is that okay? So for school board chair, that would be Ken Martin. School board vice chair, Lori Rothaus. Budget committee, Naomi Halter. Alternate, Ken Martin. I didn't assign the school board boards association delegate because it wasn't assigned last year, so I assume we're going to keep that. Curriculum instruction and technology committee is Jenna Hardy and Lori Peters. The school bus stop committee, Naomi Halter. Professional development committee, Lori Peters. Alternate, Ken Martin. Planning and building committee, Lori Rothaus. Wellness policy implementation committee, Lori Peters. Healthcare cost containment committee, Ken Martin. Parent district group, Jenna Hardy. Alternate, Ken Martin. Communications committee, Jenna Hardy and Ken Martin. Policy committee, Naomi Halter. The superintendent search committee, Lori Peters, Lori Rothaus, and Jenna Hardy. For the Merrimack Teachers Association collective bargaining committee, Lori Rothaus and Lori Peters. For the Merrimack Educational Support Staff Association collective bargaining committee is Lori Rothaus and Lori Peters. Advise and confer positions go to Naomi Halter and Jenna Hardy. And then for the out-of-district assignments, Greater Woods Subcommittee, Ken Martin. Town Center Committee, Matt, we gave that one back to you. You're welcome. Parks and Recreation to Naomi Halter with the alternate of Lori Rothaus. And the Merrimack 275th Anniversary Committee to Lori Rothaus. Jenna.
So I'd like to ask that we not vote on this tonight to finalize it, and that we have time to have some additional conversations about what is best and who's best suited, or what's best for the district as far as who's doing what. I also would like to see some of these revised. For example, speaking about to Mr. Susi about the athletic advisory committee that Lori's on, I think that should be added on here, since that's a committee within the district that Lori will be participating on. Two of the board assignments that I'm given, the district parent group and the communications committee, I've been on both of those since I was on the board, and they've never met. So I'm not sure they exist. So I think it might be good to revise this list a little bit, because I don't know, like I said, school bus stop committee, I'm not sure if that's ever met.
I can actually speak to that. It's not a regular committee. It only meets when there's an issue that comes up with a bus stop. So I'm kind of on call for that one. So that one should still be there. I actually do share some of those same questions about these committees, because I feel like we've sat in a lot of these school board meetings, and I've heard committee reports regularly from like one or two, and yet we have this whole giant list. And I do agree that it might be valuable to evaluate, are these active committees? Do we need to rethink our committee structure? I think that's a fair thing to do.
And I'll agree. Even I've been on the Greater Woods subcommittee for 2 years, and I don't even know what that is.
Well, and like in my,
I do.
and one of the things that I noticed, because I had emailed you, because you'd asked us to email our interest, and you put me on a committee I've been on before, which is Professional Development Committee. But that committee meets at the same time as our school's all hands meeting every Thursday. And so it's like, I cannot get out of my all hands meeting to be on the Zoom call for the professional development, which both of those changed after we made committee assignments last year.
Okay. Yep, Lori.
So I was going to say about the athletic, I'm not really sure if that's going to be a sitting committee or just an advisory, a couple meetings to, so he just reached out to me. So I'm not really sure that's going to be a sitting committee. I don't think it's going to be a sitting committee. I think it's going to be a couple meetings with parents, listening to concerns, trying to come up with some of the things that we talked about tonight. So, but I think a lot of these committees, meet sometimes. I know with the planning and building committee, we probably meet 4 times a year. So a lot of times there isn't a report, but when we meet, they're long meetings and it's important.
They are long meetings, because I'm usually with you guys.
Yes, they are long meetings.
Town Center Committee meets once a month. That's to update them on the O'Gara Drive loop and how we're processing through that. So that's really active. I've been involved in that for a number of years, as they patiently wait for us to build a sidewalk.
But I would suggest that we vote tonight on the committees that we do have, because there are committees that will start meeting and they need to have representation. And then we can go back and figure out what we need to change.
Jen?
Like I said, I would like to have some more time to have additional conversations, and that would include around our teams for collective bargaining. Right now, it's very concentrated with 2 people, which I think did a fantastic job in the Merrimack Teachers Association, but I would like to see the past practice on the school board has been to diversify that, so that we always have people in the trenches learning behind the experienced people. And right now we don't have that structure in here. And I would like some time to talk about what past practice looks like and what best practice looks like going forward, in making sure that all of us on the board have experience negotiating contracts.
And I can see that point for sure. And my thought process behind this is, especially when it comes to our support staff right now, we are in such a critical shortage across the board, with almost, whether it's paras, custodial staff, kitchen staff, you name it. We're in such a dire situation. We haven't been fully staffed in quite some time in that position. So my thought was the 2 folks that hit it out of the park with the collective bargaining agreement this past year, I think have more than qualified themselves to handle the negotiations for this really important contract. So my mindset behind that one. So do we?
I would like to make a motion that we take a pause and table this and vote at the next school board meeting.
Do we have a second?
Yep. I'll second.
Second. Take a vote. Discussion.
Discussion.
Yes.
To answer Lori's question, are there any of these committees that will meet in the next 2 weeks and will need someone to represent us? Does anyone have that information?
CIA and PD will both meet.
And as somebody who's on the CIA committee, I'm absolutely willing to continue that committee assignment until we have renewed.
I'm trying. I don't think Parks and Rec will. I'm looking at my calendar.
The last meeting was canceled.
Yeah. Well, in that one, there's like you have to actually be sworn in.
You have to be
with
sworn
the,
in. So
with the town clerk. I didn't put in my calendar when the next one is. Oh, but it's not before our next meeting, so that I know about.
Go ahead, Lori.
So I just want to know what we think is going to change by holding off for 2 weeks, because if there's going to be conversations about who should serve on what committees, I think that we're all here right now. We should do the business publicly. We can't have a non-public on this. So I'd like to know what's going to change, because we can't meet to have any more discussions. So I think we should bring it to the table.
I would like to understand how the discussions that might happen between now and the next meeting might differ from the discussions that happened between the last meeting and this meeting.
So normally what happens in board assignments is on the day of the meeting, this is for the town and the school, the chair comes forward and brings forward the board assignments. Unless there's a conversation that someone disagrees, which never has happened, then they vote on board assignments. So I'm prepared to vote. I think that's what our job is to do. This is a business meeting.
I would like to see the teams for collective bargaining be diversified across the board. I participated as the second on the Merrimack Education Support Staff Association negotiations the last time it was negotiated. I do have experience in that. I would love to work with either you or Lori Peters to negotiate that contract. I was listed as a negotiator on that contract before the revamp. I asked to remain. I don't understand why I'm not able to do that, but I would like to continue to do that. So I would like to see that change made.
Going back to what Jenna had mentioned earlier about committees that may or may not be relevant anymore, is that a conversation we can have here and discuss what the, whether or not we even want to have these listed on our assignments anymore? Does anyone have that answer?
If I can chime in, because I remember most of these. I don't think the communications committee's been active since like 2017, to be quite honest with you. So that'd be up for your consideration.
Does anyone know about the district parent group? Have I been missing every meeting now for the last how
If you
long
have.
I've been on
No,
the board?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
I was my first year on the healthcare cost containment committee, and I was on the Zoom calls. But as far as the wellness policy implementation committee, I've never received an email or communication about its existence.
I did serve on that a couple years ago, and
That was a few years ago. Dave Zicke was
there.
there.
Was a committee.
Yeah.
So
But there wasn't last year,
It
and-
was once a month, and they talk about incentives for wellness. So I did serve on that.
I think that's now part of the healthcare cost containment committee, because that's what they do, is those incentives
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
When it was initially incarnated, a lot of it had to do with healthy choices as far as eating goes. And Dave Zicke, our food service director, was a part of it. And so he had a lot of input to that, because I think at that point in time, he was the food service liaison director for the state of New Hampshire. So he served in that role, and he goes to Washington, D.C. a lot. But then I think after that passed, then I think everything kind of split into the health cost containment committee, which I'm not sure about the frequency of which that meets, but I know
We meet.
it has to meet because, we get the $3,000 from the health trust every single year.
Yeah, we have met.
Yeah.
We've met 3 times so far this year, and I think we have another one coming up at the end of May.
Yeah, so that's an active one. Yeah.
So I feel like this conversation illustrates that there is some revision to be done, and that I would like to table it, and I would like to call the question. I would like to.
Can I say something quick before you call the question? I think the reason that it's might be appropriate to table it at this point is because of the organizational aspect of it. It's because we're not sure that the list of committees is. It's not necessarily about who's on the committees. It's about what are the committees, where are the responsibilities. Because if you've got someone on 3 committees that don't really exist anymore, and you've got someone on 3 committees that meet monthly, that's not necessarily an equitable division of labor. And so those conversations, I understand transparency and wanting to have those conversations in public, but at the same time, like, the organizational aspect of it is just, it's like, take a few minutes to breathe and think, and as long as there's nothing in the next 2 weeks that's gonna like be badly affected by not having these finalized yet.
So since we can't have a non-public on these very discussions, what's the plan to have these discussions? Like,
Well, it wouldn't be a board discussion. It would be us saying to you, I'm really sorry. We want you to go back to the drawing board and make the list over again.
okay. And then when it comes to maybe taking a look at what committees are no longer relevant or serving, is that also a discussion we need to have, or is that something we can discuss with our administrative team and coordinate?
I think you can coordinate as the chair with the administrative team just to verify which committees we have as a redraft. And then we can have a conversation about assignments once we have an accurate list of the committees.
And a conversation about what is in the best interest of making sure we have all members at the table for collective bargaining, so that there's people that are experts and have done it and that are being trained.
So we call the question? Call the question. The motion is to table the school board assignments in order to go back and reassess which committees, hopefully I'm getting the wording right, reassess which committees are no longer relevant, and just a general cleaning up of what we currently have. All those in favor? All opposed? Abstain? It passes 3-2. All right, we will revisit that at our next meeting. Next item on the agenda is call for 2023 New Hampshire School Board Association resolutions. I was looking over this packet. Am I just reading this packet? Because it's a lot
No,
of
it's just
stuff.
an announcement that we can submit resolutions and by the date.
All right. I'll just, for the record's sake, just a little bit of information. New Hampshire School Board, each New Hampshire School Board Association member school board is allowed to submit one or more proposed resolutions, and proposals may be a new resolution or may seek to amend any current New Hampshire School Board Association resolution. And each member school board may send one voting delegate to the annual delegate assembly. However, any and all school board members are invited to attend. The deadline for submitting these proposals is the close of business on Friday, July 28th, 2023. And there is a ton of information, including all of the current policies, resolutions, and statements for the New Hampshire School Board Association, which is available on our website if the public wants to and find some nice reading material. Questions, comments?
You kind of said this, but I'm not sure if the public knows, is that the resolutions that this is talking about inform the New Hampshire School Boards Association about what they advocate for at the state level. And so it's really the member school boards coming together as a group. The same way when we have an issue, we come together and we decide as a group what we feel is in the best interest of the Merrimack School District. This is all of the members of the New Hampshire School Boards Association coming together and deciding collectively as a group what they feel is in the best interest of the school boards across the state. And I think it is in our best interest, since we are part of this organization, to send someone to their delegate assembly in October, and that was one of the committees that didn't have a person in it, because that's our voice, that's our vote. And that's a way for us to communicate the needs of our district at the state level. And so for your consideration.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, even just to have a presence there is important. So the assembly is Saturday, October 14th, which is marching band season for me. So that may not be an option for me. But if I'm able to do it, I would be very interested in that. But of course, open it up to anybody on the board who's willing to represent us there for sure. maybe a conversation we can have during goals setting or one of our summer meetings. Cool. All right. Further questions, comments, or discussion? Moving on. Next item on the agenda is the Gallup survey.
In your packet tonight is some information that we've received about participating in the New Hampshire Student Gallup poll. I mentioned this last meeting in my update. Since its launch in 2009, the Gallup Student Poll has helped schools better serve students by providing positive measures that support engagement in school and create hope for the future. To date, this poll has been completed over 6 million times in school districts across the country, and we've been invited to participate through our newly established relationship with the New Hampshire Learning Initiative. We've been invited to participate in this New Hampshire specific version poll. I've given some information about how that has come to be. The New Hampshire Learning Initiative with Gallup and a statewide work-based advisory group has come together to create a 24-item academic survey for students. It would be anonymous, voluntary, and take about 10 minutes to complete. If we agree to participate in this longitudinal study, we will give this survey in May, between May 8th and June 6, 2023, but then we would also be agreeing to give it in 2024 and 2025. We would be inviting students in grades 7 through 12 to participate in this survey so that we could really see if some of our initiatives that we're commencing right now really are making a difference in the lives of students. The poll measures the elements of student engagement, hope, and career-connected learning. In your packet is a list of the actual items that students would be asked. Our original invitation from Carolyn Eastman, and I know Harley has already gone, but he's been working closely with Carolyn as she is the ELO coordinator for the New Hampshire Learning Initiative. And then also just some information about academic surveys. There's the technical advisory that our commissioner put out back in 2017. And then also some information, I believe there was a question as to whether or not this was an academic versus a non-academic survey. This survey, as you can see, doesn't ask students anything about anything that would be about their social behavior or family life or anything like that. So it is absolutely an academic survey. I did have the legal team take a look at the 24 items just to make sure. But just to provide an additional layer, we will, if you agree for us to move forward with participation, I would post the actual questions on our district page, forward it to all of the families at the middle school and high school. Students can opt out. It's voluntary, so they can just simply say the day of, I'm not going to take the survey. Parents will also have a form that they can fill out if they don't want their student to participate. So I feel like we've covered a lot of bases there. It is a really unique, timely opportunity for us to be able to get, I think, some baseline information on some of the initiatives that we're working on. So competency-based learning, Harley's putting together the ELOs. We're looking to continue to build our multi-tiered system of support for mental health and behavior. The enormous amount of curriculum work that we're doing, transitioning to a new assessment suite. It really is a great opportunity for us to really look at where we are now and where we might be 3 years from now. So I bring that forth for your consideration and hope that it's something you would be interested in the district participating in.
Great. Comments, questions? I think you said 2 out of the 3 most important words: anonymous, voluntary, and the one you forgot was it's free.
Oh, it is free.
Yeah.
I should have added that.
Yeah.
It is free. With our relationship with the New Hampshire Learning Initiative, it will be no cost to us.
I actually like the questions. I think they'll be beneficial. I do like as it says, a strong opt-out policy through the multiple modes of communication with parents and with students.
Thank you.
Yeah, my SEL antennas went up looking at some of these questions. There's really good. I can see the insight this would provide, and just knowing the overall culture and how a student feels on a day-to-day basis. I really liked a lot of these questions.
Something I noticed is so they used the word hope, like measuring student hope. And at first when I was reading, I was like, hope, why are we measuring hope? And then I read the questions, and this is something I wanted to point out for people who are listening who maybe haven't read the packet, is when they're talking about hope, they're talking about students' outlook on being at school, how they feel at school. The questions were things like, I know I will graduate from high school. I have a great future ahead of me. I can think of many ways to get good grades. Measuring those things will lead to increased graduation rates. So we're not talking about like some nebulous, touchy-feely thing. We're talking about how do our kids feel about their education, and in the horrible off chance that they're not feeling great, we'll be able to identify that and take steps and say, oh, wow, we need to engage them more. We need to give them confidence that they'll succeed, and they'll graduate, and they'll do all the great things we know they can do.
Yeah, I echo Naomi's sentiment. The thought that we could find out that any of these areas is lacking is to me motivation to do it. I would love to know if kids don't feel like, I mean, one of them is I feel safe in school, and the adults at my school care about me. I'm like, God forbid we would score super low in that. If that was the case, I would want to know so that we could fix that. That's like a number one thing, right? So I love the questions, and I think so much of it, and I agree about the baseline, especially for the work-based learning questions at the high school. Right now, a lot of this might come out as a big, not so much. But in 3 years, if we were to do it again, seeing all the work that Harley's putting in, I think we, in our as a district, focusing on that goal, we'll see some differences. And that is data that we as a board and a district can point to say, this is where we've made progress. And I think that's huge.
I think also, just to add to that, because it's a longitudinal study, we'll be getting new information over the course of 3 years based on the different grade level bands. So we'll be able to, I think, identify where does the hope or engagement or career connected learning start to increase or decrease. And then we can increase our efforts or adjust our efforts accordingly.
So are we taking a vote on going ahead with this? Oh, go ahead.
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
So first off, I want to say, like, typically I'm a high school student. The surveys, like, a lot of high schoolers find them to be like pointless and like whatever. But like, I think that this one actually could be really good for the district, because I think some of the results that you might get in the first year of it could like seem jarring, because like from a high schooler's perspective, one time my sophomore year, this random story, but we were sat down in my social studies class, and my teacher looked at us and goes, guys, how are you doing today? And all of us just didn't know how to answer that question, because we had never been asked it in an academic situation. And so I think that this survey, the first year of it, like I said, could be jarring, and you might not expect some of the things that you see, because a lot of times students aren't asked a lot of the stuff that they should be asked, just how are you doing on a day-to-day basis. But I agree that it could be really good for SEL development within the district. And I also agree with Ms. Hardy that the work-based learning portion, yes, might come up a lot of empty spaces right now, but with the new program, it can work as like a perfect guide and pathway for development of that program.
Thank you, Caitlin.
That's a great observation.
Beautiful.
So I'll make the motion that we participate in the Gallup 3-year longitudinal data study.
Second by Lori. All those in favor? That's 5-0-0. It passes.
Thank you. I'll be sure to share the scorecard when we get it.
Looking forward to that. All right. And that wraps up new business, unless there's any other. Go ahead, Lori.
So I just want the board to be aware, if they want to participate in the 4th of July parade again, I am willing to call Bailey's to set up the float. I hope Naomi's kids will come and help us blow the balloons again. We did get the banner in to thank the teachers and, to thank the town for the teachers' contract and for voting on all of warrant articles. Matt's going to take care of that and put it up on the fence tomorrow, but we can use that also in the float. So I just want to know who would like to be a part of it. Do we reach out to the budget committee? which we did. I don't think everyone got the email last year, but we do have T-shirts that Matt bought for the budget committee in red. I think everyone still has their blue T-shirts, and we have Planning and Building in white. So I just need to know if people are willing to do that again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So is that a yes? All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be happy to if I were here.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you weren't
We'll
here.
get a
last year.
cutout.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoever's here and their children.
Great. All right. If there are no others, moving on to policies and the first review of the home education instruction.
Yes, the first review. And as you can see, a lot of red ink.
Lots of
This has
red.
been- This has been thoroughly reviewed by our legal counsel in the same manner that all of our policies have been forwarded to and reviewed by legal counsel. So I think, the appropriate motion at this point in time is to waive the first reading, and it will be posted on our website for public comment.
I move that we waive the first reading of the home education instruction policy and post it on our website for public comment.
We have a second?
Second.
Second from Lori. All those in favor? It's 5-0-0.
May I just say a little correction, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but item D, letter D, where it says annual notification required, I think that should say annual notification requirement. Because
Nail
the-
me.
It's funny because I didn't have a chance to look at this one until today, but that's one of my notes that I was going to send to you and
Yeah.
Sandy.
Okay.
All right. Great. Moving on to the next policy, which is the second review of video surveillance on school property.
Mhm. And we have not received any comment on this one. Once again, been thoroughly reviewed by legal counsel. And so we will keep it posted for third review and possible action and adoption. Okay.
Great.
I have a comment and a question on this one. Because what happened for those in the audience is our first reading of this. I brought up a question about audio recordings on school buses, and then that caused a couple of updates to be made to it. And so I have a question about one of the updates, which is why I didn't bring it up the last time we talked about it, because it wasn't in there yet. The question is, under student discipline on the bottom of page 1, it says video and audio, if on school buses, because we can only record audio on school buses, recordings may be reviewed by district personnel for discipline purposes. If disciplinary action is taken as a result of the recording, the parent or guardian of the student may request to view the recording with the principal and or his or her designee. And my question is, and I may have answered on my second reading of it today, I may have answered it for myself in the next paragraph, but I want to mention it anyway, is what practices do we have in place to protect the privacy of uninvolved bystanders or victims if we're talking about a bullying case? Because, you've got a parent of a child who's facing disciplinary action for something, and then they come in and we take great pains in written records to omit names and not necessarily disclose, and how are we protecting those people's privacy? It says later on, so this may be the answer, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Any release or viewing of the video will be in accordance with applicable state and federal laws, including but not limited to FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So I'm assuming that's the answer now that I've read it again. But
Yeah, that is the answer. And to give you a little historical perspective, Merrimack was key in writing that law. In fact, I testified in front of the legislature regarding this law. People were concerned that we would be sitting there listening to conversations, and that's why you just view the incident and the incident only, and only with due cause if there's an issue, but there's provisions in there to protect the rights of others, so they won't be shown or anything like that.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So are we calling to waive the third? No, this is the second review. So
And I think it should stay up for another week
Stay up
because
for
it
another week.
changed substantially between last time and this time. So
Correct. So do you have a motion?
we don't need one.
Don't need one? Even better. All right. Any other questions or comments? Moving on. Approval of minutes from the April 17th, 2023 public and non-public.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of September 17, 2023, public and non-public minutes.
Second?
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 5-0-0.
I don't know if this matters, but Lori just said September, not April.
Oh, I did. I'm sorry.
I just want to.
Oh my gosh.
Want to revote?
Thank you for catching
Are we
that.
good?
We all apparently heard April.
Yeah.
I'm all ahead of our.
We all thought September or April, yeah. Do we need to revote on that?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, let's revote anyway, just for the record.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from the April 17th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Caitlin. Someone's keeping us on track. All right. Next, consent agenda, educator resignations.
We have no resignations this evening.
Yay! Educator nominations.
We do have several teacher nominations to bring forward for your consideration. Kylie Limo, elementary teacher at Thorntons Ferry School. Ryan McKenna, physical education teacher, Mastrocola Elementary School. Kylie Salvatore, elementary teacher, Thorntons Ferry. Bridget Bishop, elementary teacher, Mastrocola. Hannah Trovich, James Mastrocola Upper Elementary School. Hannah Green, elementary teacher, James Mastrocola Upper Elementary. Caroline Mahoney, elementary teacher, Mastrocola Elementary School. And Amanda Apostolou, school counselor at Thorntons Ferry.
I have a motion to accept the teacher nominations.
I make a motion to accept the teacher nominations.
Second by Jenna. Discussion? All those in favor? 5-0-0.
Ken, may I just make a fast comment too?
Yeah.
Thanking all of you and the community for supporting the teacher's contract. We have seen a huge increase in the quality of candidates because our contract is now competitive with other local districts. So the quality and the number of applicants has increased for many positions also. So therein lies the importance of making sure that we maintain a competitive collective bargaining agreement at all times, because it was not like this last year, but there has been a measurable improvement. So thank you.
And I'll echo that. I have also, in my conversations, heard the sentence, Merrimack's got a pretty good contract, just brought up to me. So that's awesome news. It's great news. And last on the consent agenda, administrator nomination.
We have 2 administrator nominations for your consideration. Craig Bozeman, who's in the audience tonight, becomes the new middle school principal with your approval, and Sarah Reinhardt will be our new director of student services.
All right. Yes, Lori.
I make a nomination with great enthusiasm for these 2 positions for the Merrimack School District.
I have a second. Yes, discussion.
I'd just like to say that the administrative team brought to us 2 great candidates. I was very impressed with meeting both of them, and I'm looking forward to working with them this next year.
Here, here.
Yeah, both were very impressive. Thank you. All those in favor? Passes 5-0-0. I mean, you stayed for the whole meeting. I mean, that's
Yay.
that alone. Yeah. All right. Moving on to other. Do we have any committee reports? Speaking of committees, nothing from the parent district group or anything like that. No. All right. Correspondence.
I did have one correspondence, and again, I put them back to the chain of command.
I had a correspondence, and I encouraged them to speak at public comment.
I also had a correspondence in which I hopefully addressed their concerns. I haven't heard back. So, and moving on to comments from the board.
My only comment is some of the feedback I got, it was people are very excited that we did that huge safety training last week at the high school. But if we could have done an alert, we did talk about it at the board meeting. We did, even if the police department could put it on their, they have that, sign out there, hey, guess what? Because it's really their training too. But that would be something just for the future.
All right, we now open up the microphone to public comments on agenda items. And just remember, if you are planning on speaking, please state your name and your address. And if you're a student, no need to state your address.
Not a student. Hi, good evening. I'm Heather Robitaille. My address is 45 Springfield Circle. I'll be brief. I know we're running long. I do believe the parents committee group, from what I heard of when I was looking at the materials for tonight's meeting, actually used to be like a quarterly meeting between a representative of the parent-teacher organizations for our different schools, kind of share best practices and different ideas that they were doing, which as a member of one of our parent-teachers organizations, I would love to see that happen if the board feels that that is a good use of everyone's time, but I would love to be a part of that. I also did want to thank Ken and Lori Rothaus for opening the dialogue with the town council regarding the voting date and the impact that it does have on our public schools and our ability to compete for contracts. I believe the schools are the heart of our community, and I think our voters have showed us that they also see the value in what we are all doing in the school district, in our public schools here in Merrimack. They see the value in our educators, and they are willing to invest in it. So I would love to see that dialogue continue, to have more facts to bring forth that might overcome some of the hurdles that might be in place historically or presently. And with that, our community recognizing the value of our educators, I would also like to appreciate our administrators, our educators, and all of our staff that goes into making our schools possible, because they're really a special place in Merrimack, and I appreciate everything that they do, and I'm looking forward to celebrating our Thornton's Ferry staff next week, and I hope that everyone else gets a chance to appreciate and celebrate their educators that make the future of this community possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional comments or public comments, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Move. Do I have a second? Second. I think Jenna got her hand up first. All those in favor? All right, let the record show the agenda says adjourn at 8:30 and it's 8:33. Just saying. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.